All right, Alex, we got a UFC fight night, and drum roll, it's not in the Apex. We actually travel halfway across the world to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, UFC Saudi Arabia. The Saudis get their UFC card they've been waiting for. What was that?
I thought I was holding onto the microphone weird. I was hoping nobody could see that. And then I said it to myself. Continue. UFC Saudi Arabia is going to be good. It starts at like 11 a.m. our time.
And the Saudis continue their takeover of all sports with now MMA. 5-5 main card. Each fight is very intriguing. It's fighters we've all heard of, fighters that have been on pay-per-view main cards, some pay-per-view main events. But Alex, let's jump into it. Then the first fight is a banger. We got Johnny Walker, the Brazilian, who fights out of Ireland, taking on Volkan Oezdemir, the Swissman. Johnny Walker, 7 wins, 5 losses, 1 no contest in the UFC. Oezdemir, 7 wins, 6 losses. So both guys that are very entertaining, but both guys who've had up and down UFC careers.
So you're allowed to say Swissman?
Swiss man. It hasn't historically been.
Right, no, I'm not going down that road again. I'm sorry.
It has not historically been tainted. A derogatory term.
Okay, that's fine. Johnny Walker, he's a powerhouse. I mean, he's entertaining. We've seen him finish his series with Magomed Ankalaev. That is now done. 2
fights, 1 no contest, 1 loss. He had 3 wins in a row before that, though.
Yep.
So can he pick up the momentum?
Little fun fact for you, Volkan's also lost to Magomed Ankalaev.
Yes. Volkan is 2-3 in his last 5, and he's alternated wins, losses in his last 4.
Right.
And he is coming off of a win, a round 1 submission, so that would tell you if this trend continues, could it be a loss for Oezdemir? I think either way this fight goes, these are 2 guys. Yes, they're up and down, but both guys are entertaining. They're going to put on a good fight here.
So what I got to say about this one is while both guys are heavy strikers, heavy not, on the weight side, but heavy with how strong.
Both guys got some heavy hands.
Right, how strong them hands are.
They can knock you out. 12 out of 19 wins for Oezdemir,
right.
KOs. 16 out of 21 wins for Walker,
right.
KOs.
Walker is taller and longer. He has an 82-inch reach to a 75-inch reach. I would call that significant. Because it's so long. Clip that. Anything that is that long, I'd consider an issue for me. I think Johnny Walker is going to win this fight by KO because he has that long thing that's going to help him win this fight.
I see what you're saying. I think, honestly, this is a toss-up fight. This is a 50-50 fight to me.
Well, it is on the odds. It's minus 110 on both. So
I'm going to go with Johnny Walker. I'm going to agree with you. But, honestly,
you're not going to talk about that reach?
The reach is something, but Oezdemir is a beast, too.
He is good.
However this fight goes, there's no way I'm going to be surprised by whoever wins, however vicious they win, however long Johnny Walker is.
I'm just happy I've made you uncomfortable. Moving on to the middleweight division for the next fight.
Middleweight division.
Sharabudtin Magomedov is taking on Joelton Luderbach from Germany.
A fight that was originally supposed to be the prelim main event, or last prelim fight. Now has moved on to the main card with some drop-offs. Interesting fight.
This is Magomedov.
I think you might not recognize the name if you're a big UFC fan, but you definitely recognize the face in his wonky eye, as you would say.
He's got one eye that is almost completely grayed out.
Very foggy.
And
he looks like a dog that's over 10 years old.
Right, and red hair.
And his name is Magomedov. He's a scary-looking dude.
He is.
Everything about him, everything we just described, his look, his hair, his name, very scary.
Right. Not only does he look scary and is scary, he's 12-0, which is scary. 1-0 in the octagon.
Yeah, and he's good.
He's finished his fights 83% by knockout, but 100% by decision in the UFC. He's still winning the fights, but he's not coming into the UFC with such crazy knockout power that we've seen.
Wait, say that again. He's winning 80% of his fights, but 100 by decision?
Of his 12-0 record,
yes,
83 of his total fights he's won by knockout. in the UFC, he's only won by decision.
Thought that was one of those Yogi Berra
No,
quotes,
no.
like you win 100% of the time,
Right.
50% of the time.
It's nothing like that. This is the UFC debut for Joelton Luderbach. He was fighting 5 or 6 times a year from 2016 to 2019.
It's a good way to get into the main show.
Right, and that's how he's only 31 with like 47 professional fights. Very impressive from his side. This is going to be his first fight at middleweight in a while. He's been fighting catchweight at like 175. He's fought in some lightweight fights. He's been in the PFL. He's kind of been everywhere. He's bounced
So this
around.
is going to be a heavy fight for him.
This is going to be a heavy fight. Does he get gassed out? Does the power translate? I think Magomedov is going to do what Magomedov does. He's minus 260 on the 265, minus 260 on the odds. I think Sharabudtin is going to win, and I think he's going to record his first finish in the UFC. I think he's going to get a little knockout win here.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with the scary guy that we know about.
Scary Sherry?
Scary Sherry versus the guy we don't know too much about who's been on the regional circuit. Give me Magomedov too.
Cool. All right.
Let's move on. The
Welterweights.
Welterweight, and it's a guy that's been around in the UFC for a long time, Kelvin Gastelum. 12 wins, 9 losses, 1 no contest in the UFC.
But he's 2-6 in his last 8.
2-6 in his last 8. And he's taken on Daniel Rodriguez, D-Rod. 7-3 overall in the UFC. He's lost 2 in a row, but one's a Ian Gary knockout.
Right.
One's a Neil Magny submission. So
That was the other.
It's 2 losses. Yeah, you never want to lose like that, but it's respectable losses. Can he turn the ship around, get his momentum back? Because he was on a upward trajectory before his last 2 fights, and he's taking on a guy in Gastelum, as you said, is kind of been on a downward trajectory.
Yeah.
His last fight was in December, which was a round 3 submission loss to Sean Brady. That is Kevin Gastelum we're talking about.
Right.
Kevin
but
Gastelum, he's never been KO'd, which is surprising.
I was going to say that, and also
He's got a chin, and he's a guy that's he's gonna stand there and fight you.
with him being 2-6 in his last 8 fights,
He has nothing to lose.
he's lost to big names like Robert Whittaker, Jared Cannonier.
And this all started with the Izzy loss,
Right.
which
Like,
was fight of the year.
He's fought monsters.
He doesn't fight anybody. Yeah, he's only fought top 10 guys pretty much.
Exactly. So you can't take away like all those losses. It's just to say that he's faced the top level of competition most recently, and he hasn't come away with a bunch of victories in that time. Daniel Rodriguez, 2 losses in a row, like you said. The first loss ended his 4-fight win streak, which he was on a big high. That's kind of the thing that we see high
Yeah,
highs.
he was 7-1
lows.
in the UFC, and then lost by submission to Neil Magny, then got knocked out first round his next
So-
fight. So where does he go now?
Gastelum's favorited on the odds. He's minus 245 here.
I'm surprised it's that
So
big of an odds.
I was too, so I did some digging.
Okay.
I looked to find out why Gastelum is 3-0 against shorter reach since 2010. That's the only
Pretty much his
reasonable-
whole career, yeah.
right? The only reasonable time frame we need to look at, and 75% as a favorite. He's 9-3 as a favorite in the UFC, which is pretty strong. The 3-0 against shorter reach. They're both southpaw fighters, so it's you're a weird stance fighting a weird stance. Those types of things. He's a little less accurate on the
There's
feet.
surprisingly a big age gap where Gastelum somehow is only 32 years old. D-Rod is 37.
That's the other thing. 5 years plus an age difference gives the younger
And
fighter.
they always say
like,
unless you're heavyweight, once you're over 35, there's usually a major drop off.
So I see here Gastelum's gonna come in with less. Not power, but Rodriguez is gonna be throwing with more intentional power. I think Gastelum's gonna take him down, do some good old G and P,
Some GP.
and either win the fight by TKO or decision.
I
honestly.
agree with you. I think Gastelum. I think he rights the ship. He did lose his last fight, but before that, he got a win, which kind of seemed like maybe he kind of stabilized his career a little bit. I think Gastelum comes in a motivated fighter. Daniel Rodriguez, 2 losses in a row. I don't know if he's going to be able to rebound with the two finishes he's had in a row. I'm going to go with Gastelum. I think he gets the win. I think he's fought the tougher guys in his career. Give me Kelvin Gastelum.
Let's go. Do you think he's gonna finish it?
In my mind, first thought is going to be a decision win by Kelvin Gastelum.
Fair enough. All right, let's go on to some big boys.
And this is one I'm going to go out on a limb and say I guarantee this co-main event does not go to the scorecard. And that's Sergei Pavlovich, the Russian, taking on the other Russian, Drago, that is Alexander Volkov. One crazy thing about Pavlovich, he's 18-2 overall, 6-2 in the UFC, all of them by KOs. And get this, 6 straight fights. Oh, no, I'm sorry. None of his UFC fights, none of the 8 UFC fights have gone out of the first round. He's had 20 career MMA fights.
That's crazy.
17 of them have been first round. And he's fighting a guy who has 24 out of his 37 career wins by KO, 6 of them in the UFC. So I just don't see this one lasting to the scorecards. And this one probably is a first round fight, a 1-round fight. One of these guys get knocked out. And I'm leaning towards one specific Russian over the other one. How about you?
Man, I got to agree. I agree with one specific Russian over the other, number one.
But we might have different Russians.
I also agree that this is probably going to be a short fight as far as it's going to be a quick knockout from one of the 2 Russians. The Russian I pick, I share a name with, Alexander. My name isn't Alexander. We share the Alex part. Volkov, Drago. I think he's going to win by knockout, first or second round. It'd be crazy if they got out of the first round with how hard these heavyweights always swing.
Volkov has good power, but I'm going with the guy with crazy power, and that's Pavlovich. I think he goes out there, he knocks out his countrymen. I think he moves to 7-2 in the UFC. His last fight was against Aspinall, first-round knockout. I don't think that was the best Pavlovich we've seen. I think he's coming out with a vengeance. I'm picking Pavlovich first-round knockout.
Ooh, differing opinions. All right. We'll see how we do there come Saturday mid-afternoon.
Let's
move
go.
on. Oh, yeah?
Oh.
After you, sir.
Main event, a new main event. This was supposed to be Robert Whittaker, Khamzat Chimaev. Instead, we got Robert Whittaker, Ikram Aliskerov. Aliskerov? How do you say his name?
Aliskerov. We're probably all butchering it. Mine just sounds the least.
It does.
Like
Sounds the most official. Aliskerov, 2-0 in the UFC. He's a newcomer, getting a big opportunity. He does have 2 KO wins in the UFC, 15-1 overall, and he's taking on one of the fan favorites, one of the vets, Robert Whittaker, 16-5 in the UFC. He has alternated wins-loss in his last 5.
Let me say that better, please. Robert Whittaker has 3 UFC losses in the last 10 years. Continue.
And he's had 2 in the last 5. He is 5-2 in his last 7. His last win was a win against Paulo Costa, who kind of joke, kind of not a joke.
I don't mean better. I meant frame it better for Whittaker.
Frame it better for Whittaker. I think this is a case of the veteran who's staying at the top versus the up-and-comer who has a chance of a lifetime. This reminds me of the fight we saw a few months ago when BSD, Benoit Saint-Denis, got the title shot. Not the title shot. Got the
gatekeeper shot?
Gatekeeper top 5 shot against Dustin Poirier. He put on a good performance early, but the veteran who's been in there before, who's withstanded battles, storms,
right,
stood up and got the big finish. I think this fight is going to go a lot like that. I think Ikram's going to come out fast, come out looking good, but I think Robert Whittaker withstands it. And I got Robert Whittaker, and I think Robert Whittaker might finish him.
Whittaker is a good choice. He's the money line favorite, minus 155. Aliskerov being 2-0 in the UFC is very dangerous. He has a very dangerous skill set.
He's got some power.
But I have to agree with you. I think Robert Whittaker is going to win this fight, and I think Bobby Knuckles is going to show why he chose that nickname, because he's going to give Ikram Aliskerov some hands.
He's got the rare 2 nickname, the Reaper and Bobby Knuckles, both well known.
And he'll back either one up.
But yeah, Robert Whittaker, main event winner. We both agree on that. This is going to be a good fight card. I'm sure the crowd in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia is going to be up for it. I'm excited for this fight card.